So today we're very lucky to be joined with Janet Fletcher, food writer and chef. She's going to speak to us about how to make yogurt from scratch, and then we're going to have a delicious carrot cumin yogurt salad.
Thanks, Jenna. Yeah, I think this is really a great fit with what Google is trying to do here, because yogurt is a really wholesome food, and it's never more wholesome and fresh and natural than when you make it yourself. I think one of the reasons I wrote the book about yogurt was because I wanted to steer people away from what I consider the bad choices, really, at the supermarket. There are so many yogurts out there, and a lot of them are really not very wholesome. They're more like pudding. They're loaded with a lot of sugar. They're really more like desserts. And I thought if I could steer people first to some better choices at the supermarket, and then maybe gradually get them to making yogurt at home, they really have made a much more, they're making much better choices for their diet. How many of you have made yogurt at home? Okay, not very many. Any of you who make it at home make it regularly? Okay, great. Well, I'm really glad, because that means there are a lot of you who haven't. So I'm going to be able to show you something that I hope you're going to get hooked on, like I am. I'm never without yogurt in my fridge. And it's so easy. Yogurt is really just cultured milk. And we're going to start with whole milk. This is Strauss milk, the organic Strauss milk from West Marin. So I like it because it's organic. I like it because it's local, and I really like it because it's whole milk. I really am a big advocate for, this looks like a delicate operation here,
Flawless.
for whole fat dairy products. So we have a quart of milk here. And I'm going to do a couple of things with this yogurt recipe that you won't see in other books probably, or other online recipes. I have a couple of approaches that are a little different. And here's the first one. I add a little non-fat dry milk. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of non-fat dry milk, instant non-fat dry milk, to every quart of yogurt. This recipe is very scalable. I could make a half gallon of yogurt or a gallon of yogurt. And the reason I add this dry milk is because it's going to give me a thicker yogurt. The dry milk is just protein. It's no fat. Protein and some lactose, some milk sugar. And it's the protein that makes yogurt thick. So by enhancing the protein, I'm going to make a thicker yogurt. So let's get this going. I'm going to put it on about medium. And this, because it's instant dry milk, it'll just whisk right in. You can also get non-instant, but you really have to whisk it quite a bit. This will whisk in, and so I'm basically adding more protein, and I'm going to get a thicker yogurt and a firmer set. You know how yogurt can be? Some yogurts are really very fragile, and some are thicker and sturdier. And this non-fat dry milk is going to help give us a thicker and more stable set. And pardon me. It would work with whey protein. Yeah, I don't know why not. I haven't tried it. I just buy the instant dry fat, milk powder at the supermarket. But I don't know why. All I'm trying to do is bring up the protein. So the other thing I do, typically a lot of recipes are going to tell you to heat it to 180. I'm going to heat it higher. I'm going to heat it to 190, 195, and then I'm going to hold it there for 10 minutes. And the reason that I do that, first of all, the reason that people heat the milk to begin with, I mean, I started with pasteurized milk. Why do you have to heat it? I'm heating it to get rid of any bacteria that might compete with my culture. So I'm basically repasteurizing it, because milk that's been in the carton, it could have been contaminated after pasteurization. It's just a safety measure to bring the milk up to a high temperature to kill any bacteria that might compete with your culture, the bacteria that you want to grow. But by bringing it up to 190 or 195 and then holding it there for 10 minutes, I'm doing a couple of things. I'm concentrating the milk a little bit, because you'll see there's a lot of evaporation. But most important, I'm denaturing one of the whey proteins, the lactoglobulin. And by the heat in that 10 minutes at 190 or 195 denatures the whey protein, lactoglobulin. And so then that whey protein can get caught up in the yogurt. and I'm going to get, again, a thicker and more stable yogurt. These are two techniques, the dry milk and the kind of extra heating, that really work. You don't have to do them. You're still going to get yogurt, but you're going to get a more fragile yogurt and one that's not quite as thick. So I think they really help produce the kind of yogurt that I like, which is thick and creamy. You can use any kind of milk for yogurt. You can use non-fat, low-fat, full-fat. I advocate full-fat, not only because it gives you more mouthfeel and more pleasure, but because really, when you think about it, if you're going to use a non-fat milk to make your yogurt, you are saving so few calories. A lot of the recipes in the book have maybe a cup of yogurt in them, and they serve 4 people. So on a per-serving basis, the difference between using a non-fat yogurt and a full-fat yogurt is about 20 calories. And the flavor and texture difference is noticeable. So I really advocate the whole milk yogurt. Everything's going to taste better with it. All the recipes will work with low-fat yogurt in the book, but they're going to taste a lot better with full-fat yogurt. So what do you use when you make your yogurt? And it failed. Okay, well, after today, you won't fail. Yogurt really is a no-fail procedure if you pay attention to a few things. I mean, what is yogurt after all? It's cultured milk. It's milk that we add a selected culture to in order to ferment the milk sugar, the lactose. The culture, these bacterial cultures, love the lactose. They're going to eat it up and create lactic acid. And the lactic acid is going to lower the pH, it's going to raise the acidity, and that's going to cause our fermentation. It's a lot like making cheese, except the bacteria are different. And when you think about it, this yogurt, the first yogurt, certainly was just a spontaneous thing. It just happened with ambient bacteria and some shepherd's milk. And over time, over centuries, we figured out what bacteria do the best job, which ones are reliable and give the best flavor. So today, I'm just going to check the temperature. I'm going to bring it up to 190. This is called a thermopin. You can just use any kind of instant read thermometer, but this is like the Mercedes of instant read thermometers, and it's great. Do you have one, Dee Dee? I love it. Yeah, you want a thermopin. So we're at about 165. So we got a ways to go. It's going to be almost to boiling, so it's going to give us a lot of foam on the top. So, in the original yogurt was just milk that fermented from the ambient bacteria. But now we choose the bacteria that we want to add. And all yogurt, by FDA definition, or maybe it's the USDA that regulates those things, the federal definition for yogurt, there are 2 bacteria that it has to have. One would be the Lactobacillus bulgaricus, and the other is Streptococcus thermophilus. But if you look at a carton of yogurt, you're going to see probably some other Latin on there, some bacteria listed. And those are there for probiotic benefit. Things like Lactobacillus acidophilus, that's not there to really culture the milk. It's there for the probiotic benefit. So you need, when you're making yogurt, you have to have, you can culture yogurt in 3 different ways. You can use 3 different things for your culture. You can use your own homemade yogurt from the batch you just made last week. You can use a store-bought yogurt, or you can use a freeze-dried culture. You can find online and in some cheese-making supply shops, there are freeze-dried cultures, which are kind of nice to use because you can just put them in the freezer and they keep forever. But I usually use either a couple of tablespoons from my last batch of yogurt or just a freshly opened container of yogurt. Let's see where we are. We are getting real close. We're at 180. We're at 190. So at this point, I'm going to turn it down to low. On my home stove, I just turn it to low and leave it for 10 minutes. And again, that's to denature this whey protein. And then we will cool it really quickly. So I'm going to need an ice bath because what we could do once it reaches that, can somebody just let me know when 10 minutes have passed? Okay. At that point, I could just put it aside and cool it down naturally to my culturing temperature. But I'm going to try to speed things up and do it in an ice bath. And if I just put it aside, it would take, 45 minutes probably to come down to the culturing temperature. In an ice bath, it takes 3 minutes. So the culturing temperature is the temperature that the bacteria like. Everything is about keeping the bacteria happy, okay? Because they're our labor force. They're what's going to make the fermentation happen. And they like a little heat, but not too much. They don't like too much heat will kill them. Too cold, they won't work fast enough. So the target range for the bacteria, when you add it to the milk, the target range for your milk when you add the bacteria is about 108 to 118. If you go above 118, you probably kill your culture. Below 108 or 105, and the culture really gets off to a sluggish start. So we don't want that to happen. So I'm going to, after I put it in the ice bath, I'm going to monitor it and try to get it at that 108 to 118 range, and that's when we'll add our culture, okay? In the meantime, I'm going to make a very quick yogurt dish for you. One of the reasons that I wrote the book, in addition to trying to steer people to better choices and teach them how to make their own, was that I wanted to invite people to experience the savory side of yogurt. I think how many of you eat yogurt? Let me ask that. Okay, a lot of you. I'm going to guess that most of you eat yogurt for breakfast, or you have it, with honey or fruit or sugar, brown sugar, so in a sweet way. You tend to have it as a sweet, as a breakfast or as a sweet snack. There are so many wonderful savory ways to enjoy yogurt. And I've learned about them, not from growing up with them, but from exploring as a food writer, exploring other cultures. Indian, especially in North India, major yogurt territory. The Middle East, the Balkans, Greece and Turkey, these are all places where yogurt is always on the menu, always on the table. And yogurt can really help introduce you to some of these other cultures. So this is a savory dish. This is a salad that I'm going to make with a little olive oil. I'm going to just heat these carrots, grated carrots that I grated on this coarse side of the box grater. These coarse holes, that's what I use to grate the peeled carrots. You can grate them ahead. And I'm just going to swish them in this hot olive oil. I want the pan to be pretty hot. And I'm not trying to fully cook them. I just want to wilt them until they lose some of that, some of their crispness. I'm going to salt them. And, okay, I'm going to toss them just until they lose a little crispness. And then I'm going to put them into some flavored yogurt. So what I'm going to put them into is a mix of yogurt, garlic, and toasted cumin. Okay, just some whole milk yogurt. It doesn't have to be Greek yogurt. Yogurt that I've added some chopped garlic to and some toasted cumin. And let's see if we have time. I'll show you how I do the toasted cumin. So just a couple of minutes does it. I can smell that wonderful smell of the carrots coming up. And I'm going to turn it off now and just let it sit in that pan. And we will toast some cumin quickly. Cumin, all spices are so much better when they're toasted. This is just cumin straight out of the jar. And if you toast it, you have a totally different experience. Suddenly, you have cumin. You have the smell of Mexico, the smell of India. It's nothing until you toast it. And you do it just in a dry skillet, no olive oil, nothing. And so I'm going to do it. I take it probably farther than a lot of people. I like it to get really almost dark brown. And then I'm going to pound it in a mortar. If you have a spice grinder or like a dedicated coffee grinder, or even a coffee grinder that you're willing to really clean out well, then you can use your cumin. You don't want your coffee smelling like cumin. So it's good to have a dedicated grinder. I'm a real believer in doing stuff by hand. So I have a whole mortar collection at home. I just love the pounding. And I'm starting with the seeds. Yeah, you could do store-bought ground cumin, but the point is really to start with the seeds. You know, the seeds almost never go stale in your spice drawer. The powder, once it's ground, it has a very short life before it loses its aroma, like a matter of a couple of months, really, before you lose a lot, whereas the seeds you can keep for a year. So I always buy my spices whole and then toast them. I'm already getting some aroma up here, and then we'll grind them and we'll add it to, this is just some plain whole milk yogurt. And okay, I can smell it. And I'm going to add some garlic. Do we have a microplane? I'm going to grate my garlic. Thank you. This is a microplane. I can't live without this now. And I'm going to stop that. I might go a little further at home, but I'm just going to stop that for now. And I'm going to grate some garlic into here. If you drop the garlic, no big deal. Just reach in there and pick it up. And I'm going to whisk in a little bit of salt, even though I put some salt in my carrots. I know I'll need a little more there. Thank you. And I'm going to pound that. Let's put this out of the way for now. I'm going to pound the cumin. If you're going to buy a mortar, buy a big one. You can always do a small job in a big mortar, but you can't do a big job in a small one. So buy more capacity than you think you might need. Asian markets have a wonderful mortar. It's a mortar that's very much used in the Thai kitchen, and it's kind of like this, but a little bigger, and they're very inexpensive, and you'll have it for life. So see how quickly that ground up? And I'm now going to put that into my yogurt. And my carrots are hot. I don't want to add anything really hot to the yogurt because I might break it. But I think they've probably cooled off enough now that I can add them. But yogurt, yogurt's not like sour cream. You can't subject it to direct heat. You have to kind of temper it by adding something that's warm to it to bring it up to temperature. So we've got salt, garlic, and toasted cumin in here. And now I'm going to add my carrots. And probably wouldn't have hurt to cool them a little bit more, but I don't think we're going to break. And I'm going to add the herb of choice. You could use dill if you like. We're going to use some cilantro. You could use mint. You could use just parsley if you don't like any of those others. But I like cilantro in here. And I'm just going to chop some cilantro and put that in. And then do we have a nice plate we can put it on? Thank you. She's one step ahead of me. A little lemon juice usually I add to taste. Thank you. I'm going to chop some cilantro here. Okay. Okay. Is that telling me something, that buzzer?
the time
That's our
on the stove.
So is that the 10 minutes for our yogurt? Okay. Oh, well, that's what you meant. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn that off, or just move it aside, because we don't need to cook it anymore. And we'll get this folded in. As I said, you can use another herb if you prefer, if you're not a cilantro person. I've also made this salad with beets. It's delicious with beets, cooked beets. I don't usually do the beets sautéed on top of the stove. I just roast them and then grate them and fold them into the yogurt. You know, the wonderful thing you start to notice when you play around with yogurt and look at yogurt recipes is that there's such a yogurt trail that extends from where yogurt originated in Central Asia, like Afghanistan and Iran, and then from Afghanistan into Iran, then down into India it traveled, and then it traveled west to the Balkans. And in all of these places, they make a lot of the same dishes, they just vary the seasoning. So for example, an Indian would probably recognize this as very similar to a raita. A yogurt salad in India usually has maybe a little more yogurt and less vegetable. This is a Turkish salad. But in India, you're going to have more yogurt and less vegetable, but that would be a raita or a yogurt salad. In Greece, tzatziki, the cucumber salad that they make just in much the same way. So same salad, same concept, but so many variations on it that are really fun to discover. So now with our yogurt, we've cooked it for 10 minutes at 190. Now I'm going to put it in this ice bath over here. You don't need quite this much ice. Okay, and we'll see how fast this is. I don't think it's not gonna take 5 minutes. My guess is more like 3 minutes to bring it down to, 108, but I usually go 115 when I culture. So let's clean up a little bit. Normally at home, I wouldn't have anything else going on when I'm making yogurt because you want to keep pretty clean. You know, you don't want to get any other bacteria involved other than the ones that you want. So you should have clean jars, clean towels, clean implements of all kinds. This is what I'm going to incubate in. You can incubate it in anything. You can incubate in a bowl. You don't have to have a jar. Some people use just preserving jars, mason jars. But a bowl is fine.
Do you sanitize your jars the way you would?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I wash them with hot soapy water, and then often I'll just keep hot water in them until I'm ready to fill them so that they stay warm. Because now, we want to get down to 115, but then after we add the culture, we really want to baby it. We want to keep it warm. You have to keep that culture about 105 to 115 to keep the yogurt, to keep it working for you.
For how long?
Until it sets, which can be anywhere from 3 hours to 12 hours. Depends how active your culture is, how warm you're keeping it. This clicked off on me. Let me just shut it down and then it will come right back up. Do you have that proofer box that I can show people? You need nothing to make yogurt at home. You don't need this. In the old days, the grandmas would just put the milk on their wrist and they knew whether it was warm enough. And they could judge whether it was warm enough to add their culture. But this makes it a lot more precise, a thermometer. And you don't need anything special for your incubating environment. A lot of people will do it in an oven with the pilot light on. I do it sometimes just on my kitchen island. I'll put a blanket down and I'll put blankets around the jars. I'm trying to keep it at that 105 to 115. Any way you can come up with to do it. Some people put it in like a picnic cooler that they've put maybe some warm water in. So you just they just put it in a warm spot in their house. And just check to make sure you're keeping it in that incubation zone. Okay, we are already we're down there to 108. And whoops. So that didn't take long in the ice bath. And now I'm ready to add my culture. And as we said, I got a little parsley in my culture. Somebody have a plastic spoon maybe to get so I've got a little cilantro in my culture.
So Janet, if you're down to 108, are you concerned with bringing it back up?
Oh, but if you do go too low, not a problem. Just put it back on the stove until you get it back to that, 108 to 118 zone. So this is, as I said, this is store-bought yogurt, but it could have been yogurt from a previous batch. And I'm gonna, let's see, I'm just gonna thin it out a little bit. It would be nice to have, we'll see if I can do it with this little whisk. It would be nice to have a bigger glass bowl. Yeah, that'll work if it's clean. Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna put my culture in here, and I'm going to add some of the warm milk to the culture just to temper it and thin it out a little bit, and then we'll whisk it back in to the milk. I'm just trying to warm it up gently and thin it out so it will mix well with the milk. And now I'll put it back into the milk that I know is not too hot. Make sure it's well distributed with my whisk. And that's your culturing. That's all that culturing is adding that bacteria that are in the yogurt. So if you're going to use a store-bought yogurt to culture, you have to make sure that it says on there, on the package, contains live active cultures. Otherwise, you can't make yogurt. And believe it or not, there are some yogurts out there that do not have live active cultures. They tend to be the kind of mass market brands, and the reason they don't have live active cultures is because they pasteurized the yogurt after they made it to give it shelf stability. You don't want that. It's not going to make yogurt, and it doesn't have any probiotic benefit. It hasn't. That's one of the reasons for eating yogurt. So be sure you look at the container and look for that phrase live active cultures, and then you're getting some probiotic benefit, and you can use it to make your own. So more culture isn't better. A lot of people might think that was 2 tablespoons of yogurt per quart of milk. More culture isn't going to culture it faster, and it's not going to give you a thicker yogurt. In fact, it can work against you because it can overwhelm the bacteria. There may not be enough bacteria for all the sugar. The other way around, enough sugar for all the bacteria. So I'm just going to start off. I'm only doing this slow so I don't make a mess. But once I get it about halfway in there, I will just pour it in. And at this point comes what's our culturing or fermentation phase, culturing phase. And that's when we really want to make sure that we are keeping it around 105, 115. And I'll show you this device that I use at home and have come to love. You're going to want to have a lid on it. And so at this point, I would either put it on my island, my kitchen island, with towels over it, towels around it. It's like a heap of blankets on my kitchen counter. And after about 4 hours, I'll come check it. And you don't want to move it while it's fermenting. It doesn't want to be jostled. So if I think, well, it's been 4 hours, maybe it's done, I'll come undo my blankets and I'll undo the clamps, and I just jostle it a little bit. And I'm looking to see whether it's like a baked custard. I don't want it to be still soupy. It needs to be set like a custard. And I find on my kitchen counter about 4 hours. But with this device, which I only learned about when I was researching my book, and I was reading people online describing it, and it sounded kind of cool. So I contacted the company. They sent me a loaner, and I'm very happy that they haven't asked for their loaner back because I love this thing. It started out as a bread proofer. That's how they invented it. The name of the company is Broad and Taylor. I think it's a very small appliance manufacturer. And they invented it to proof bread for home bakers, but somebody along the line decided to try it for yogurt. It works great for yogurt. It's an electric device, and the thing that's so great about it compared to a lot of the electric yogurt makers is that it has a thermostat that you can set. So I can dial it to 108 degrees, which is where I do yogurt. It makes yogurt in 3 hours. Totally steady, 108 degrees. My husband uses it for his bread at 80 degrees. I crank it up for my yogurt. But, and then it collapses down. You know, the sides come down and it folds up and is easy to store. So absolutely not essential, but a nice tool to have if you're going to make a lot of yogurt because it makes it so easy and reliable. You never have to worry about whether you're keeping it warm enough. But there are just lots of ways you can keep the yogurt warm at home that I've heard about. Some people use a electric heating pad. Some people use a crock pot. They'll actually warm their milk in the crock pot for their yogurt and then use the yogurt for their incubation. Use the crock pot for their incubation as well. But I'm a big fan of just the blanket method if I'm not going to use this device. So after, say, 4 hours, or, you check it, you find that it's set. If it's not set, just keep going. Put your blanket back or put it back in your oven with the pilot light. Keep going. Check it in another hour. When you've decided that it's set, then it needs to go into the refrigerator. It's kind of tempting to scoop into it, but I think it's much better if it sets up in the fridge and really gets its nice firmness to it before you try to use it. Then if you want to make Greek yogurt, super easy. After you've chilled it down, then you need to strain it. That's all Greek yogurt is. It's just regular yogurt that's been strained to make it thicker. So you would take like a colander or a sieve and line it with, a lot of people use cheesecloth, like a double or triple thickness of cheesecloth. Oh, I forgot to bring my ply band, but I have this material that I mentioned in the book called ply band. You get it from cheese-making supply companies. It's a woven nylon, I think, and it compared to cheesecloth, it lasts virtually forever. Cheesecloth you can reuse maybe 2 or 3 times. The ply band, I've had a piece of ply band for 3 years now, and I'm still using it. So you can wash it, clean it, and reuse it. So it's a great liner for your sieve or colander. You dump your yogurt into that, set it over a bowl in the refrigerator. I usually put a plate on top just so that it doesn't absorb any refrigerator smells. And within an hour, you have Greek yogurt. You've drained out enough whey to have a nice, thick yogurt that is comparable to what you would buy as Greek yogurt. And that brings up another reason to make yogurt at home. You save a lot of money. If a quart of milk becomes a quart of yogurt. And if you look at the store at the price of a quart of milk versus the price of a quart of yogurt, you're going to realize that you're saving a lot. So if you get in the habit of eating a lot of yogurt or cooking with a lot of yogurt, you're going to save a lot by making your own. But also, you can make it with the type of milk you like, with organic milk if you like. And even better, when you're ready to eat it, you can sweeten it to your taste. You can put the fresh fruit into it instead of the processed fruit that the commercial producers use. So you're in control, and you're going to just have a much more wholesome and tasty product. And just another point to make is that if you're going to use a store-bought yogurt to culture, use a yogurt that you love. Kind of play the field and find a yogurt that you like their texture, you like their flavor. Some are tangier than others, some are mellower than others. That flavor is going to transfer to your yogurt because of the bacteria that they used. So I really like the Strauss yogurt, the Strauss organic yogurt. It's very mellow. It's not super tangy. And so if I'm going to use a store-bought yogurt to culture, I use the Strauss. It gives me a more mellow result. I know you have questions.
So with homemade yogurt, how long can you keep it in the fridge? Because us being at Google, we eat a lot of our meals here, and I tend to have a lot of food that tends to sit in my fridge for longer than it probably should. So what is a good estimate of how long it can sit?
The thing about yogurt is that it's a way of preserving milk. That's why it was so valued historically, because milk didn't last. Yogurt lasts longer. Greek yogurt or drained yogurt lasts even longer. It's like, a dry, hard cheese lasts longer than a moist one because you've got some of the whey out. So a thick yogurt that you've drained is going to last a little longer. I would say just a plain yogurt like this is going to make would last, at least a couple of weeks. And it's not going to go bad. It's not going to get fuzzy mold on it. It's going to start to taste really tangy, kind of just probably more tangy than you like. But if you take that extra step of draining some of the whey out for about an hour, I would say even 3 weeks without any change to it that you're going to perceive. So I make 2 of these at a time. But you can make this is just a quart. You can a cup of milk, a cup of yogurt for breakfast. You're done in 4 days.
What are your thoughts on the electric yogurt makers that just hold the constant temperature as opposed to this one where you can vary?
Yeah, they're very useful. That's how I started many years ago making yogurt, was when the little 5-cup yogurt makers, there are 5 cups in them, but the cups don't even hold a cup. They're like 6 ounces or even less, 5 ounces. So you're not making a whole lot of yogurt at a time, but they're reliable. They, like this device, they've determined what that culturing temperature should be, and they hold it steady. This one's just a little more versatile because you can use it for things besides yogurt, and because I know I like that 108. That, for me, is my magic hot button. And with most of the yogurt makers, you don't have that capability of setting the temperature where you want. They've preset it. But to me, the biggest drawback is they don't make very much. But if it's something that gets you going, it's a good investment. There are yogurt makers out there for $35. This is probably $135. Yeah, great question about the whey. This yogurt has everything in it. The whey comes about when I strain it to make Greek yogurt or a thicker yogurt. The whey is what drains out through the bottom, through that cheesecloth or ply band. And it actually still does have some nutrition in it. A lot of people will drink it like buttermilk. It's tangy. It's kind of like a thin kefir. So it's tangy and tart, but it is a very healthy beverage. Other people put it in soups to add some more protein and nutrition instead of just adding water to a soup or a broth. I've used it as a marinade for meats, because it still has some milk sugar in it. It's going to give you more coloring, like on a chicken or a lamb roast. To use it for your marinade, you're going to get a browner result. And I've also heard that it's a great hair conditioner, but I have yet to try that. The old timers will never throw away the whey. They use it usually as a beverage. So this salad that you're having, the carrot salad, it's a nice little kind of meze if you're serving Middle Eastern appetizers. Add some feta cheese, add some Kalamata olives, maybe just some crisp cucumbers, and some pita bread or a flatbread. It's fun to kind of roll up in a lavash. It's just a nice first course. Or you can have it as a side dish with lamb or with chicken, or just part of it with just some rice, as part of a meatless meal. And think about the variations. There are lots of variations in the book. You can use grated zucchini instead of the carrots, the grated cooked beets that I mentioned. You can use golden beets. It's really pretty. And I do one with radishes, just grated radishes. I don't know if you've seen those watermelon radishes that some of the stores have now that are pink inside. That makes a beautiful sort of yogurt salad, just the grated watermelon radishes, a little bit of garlic, a little parsley. It's really simple salads with yogurt. And they're also in the book, I would encourage you, for those of you who bought the book, to look at some of the soups. There are not only some cold soups that you can make in a blender in about 5 minutes, but there are some wonderful hot soups where you whisk yogurt in to a base of chickpeas and chicken broth and pasta, and it just gives a nice creamy richness and tang at the end. So just so many savory ways to use yogurt that I hope you'll explore.
If I could just switch topics for a second. I know you write a column for the Chronicle, and you've written about 500 books, and and I know that you do a lot of food testing too. I'm curious if you, just looking ahead into the future in the next 10, 15 years, have a sense of just some interesting food trends you see coming up.
Well, I think the DIY trend is huge, and I hope it lasts. I think it will, because I think once you've made things yourself, like yogurt at home or jam at home or pickles, you realize how much better it is than what you can buy. And it's such a satisfying thing. So I think this concept of the homemade will stay with us. Certainly, I think the locavore movement is staying with us. I think it's enlightened a lot of us about how important it is to preserve small farms, to support small farms in our vicinity, to have a low carbon footprint, and to eat locally. And we're lucky in California because there's no sacrifice involved in eating locally. It's so easy to do. I hope that gardening has become huge in recent years, and I hope that that's going to stick with a lot of people. I'm a certified master gardener. I'm a great advocate for just the satisfaction and the of gardening at home. You can garden in containers. You can grow an amazing amount of vegetables in containers, even just some herbs. It's such a pleasure to go out and harvest your own herbs from a container on your patio or your deck. But I do think that gardening is going to home gardening, home vegetable gardening is going to be with us in a big way in the future, because a lot of people are concerned about what they buy at the supermarket. They're concerned about what they feed their kids, and the way to kind of allay that concern is to grow it yourself.
Liv, did you have a question?
Hi, Janet. 2 questions. Do you do yogurt with goat milk, other milks? Maybe some people here may be interested even in soy milk and coconut. And the second question is, and do you take your yogurt beyond the Greek yogurt phase and make yogurt cheese and other dairy products?
Great question. Yeah, actually the recipe on the picture on the cover is a yogurt cheese, which is just straining it further. So I said for about an hour you're going to get Greek yogurt. If you go for, say, 24 hours in the refrigerator, you're going to get something that's spreadable, like a chev, like a fresh chev. And that's what some people call yogurt cheese. In the Middle East, it's called lebne. And it's a wonder. And that will keep for a month or more because you've taken more whey out. So you can put herbs on top of that or fold them in. You can put toasted pumpkin seeds or toasted sesame seeds on top, a little olive oil, some garlic. It makes a great cheese spread. So yeah, I love yogurt cheese. And as far as different types of milk, you can certainly use goat's milk, sheep's milk if you're lucky enough to get any, or cow's milk. Soy milk I've never played with, and I don't see how it would work, because the bacteria that you use to culture milk are going after the lactose, and soy milk doesn't have any lactose. So I don't know, you might have to find some other way to culture it. But goat's milk is going to work great with the method that I described. The only difference is that goat's milk is, the structure of it is different, and it's more fragile. It makes a more fragile curd. So I really would encourage you to use the dry milk technique with goat's milk. In fact, you'll see, here's another little thing I want to point out. When you look at a yogurt container, not only do you want to have the live active cultures, but the thing I avoid is any of the stabilizers. A lot of them have carrageenan, gelatin, tapioca starch, corn starch, all of which are food safe. They're fine, but they give the yogurt a texture that's not what I would consider authentic. They make it more kind of pudding-like or more stiff and jelly-like. So I always look for a yogurt that doesn't have any of these stabilizers, the starches or gelatin in them. They're getting harder to find, but Strauss, for example, does make a plain whole milk yogurt without any stabilizers. But if you're going to buy goat's milk yogurt, it's almost certainly going to have a stabilizer in it because the goat's milk is so fragile. They just have to do it, or it won't travel. Goat's milk makes great yogurt, and I know a lot of people who can't tolerate cow's milk will find the goat's milk very digestible. There's, a lot of people who are lactose intolerant find that they can enjoy yogurt, whereas they can't tolerate milk. They can tolerate yogurt because even though it still has some lactose, it has less typically. So that's something. If you think you're lactose intolerant or have friends who are, try a little yogurt and see if you can digest that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.